fun. Tell me a little bit about where, I was just curious, like where you're from, like where did you grow up? I didn't know if you were from the Texas area originally.
No, I've been here 5 years.
Okay,
First time I ever came to Texas was the day I moved here.
gotcha.
But um, I've moved around. I started in California
Okay.
and lived in Nebraska for quite a while. And then I met my husband and we've moved around for his company. So I've actually had to move my business 3 times.
Oh wow, okay.
We lived in California, Nebraska, Colorado, and now Texas.
Yeah. Kind of explain a little bit briefly, touching on kind of relocating your business each time. I didn't know how much of a headache that was or what that experience was kind of like for you, Jessica.
Well, like most things, I have to learn the hard way. So, the first couple of times I moved my business, the first time I moved my business, I brought clients with me, and that's how I learned to work remotely. So I focused on still servicing the clients I had had in another state, and I just figured out how to work with them remotely and fly back and forth. So that helped me there. My second move for my business, I decided to kind of do a combination. So I had to learn to market myself regionally. And that was harder, but it ended up paying off. And I actually opened up a showroom and studio. And that helped me gain exposure because I was the new kid. And coincidentally, the same month that my lease was up was the same time that my husband said, "We have an opportunity in Texas if you're interested." So that was meant to be. And so then the third time I moved my business, I had learned from the other moves and I immediately got involved. I became the incoming vice president of IDS chapter within the first 2 months of me moving here. I joined the Better Business Bureau. I started going to community events because I had learned different things I needed to do to learn a new company or new community. So I was still servicing clients from other states. I was still maintaining relationships I had learned in my previous move. And then I incorporated the new community part with my third move.
Okay.
So my advice would be to designers is a combo of the three. I had to learn the hard way, but now you know, just do all three.
Awesome. And then remind me, you've been in business for about 20 years, is that correct,
A little
Jessica?
over 20, closer to
Okay. So tell
20.
me a little bit, just curious, why design? Was that something that you maybe aspired as a child, or did someone introduce it? Who, what, why this area of creativity?
I My parents divorced when I was 12, and my mother became a single mom who was an interior designer. And back in the day, that was tough. And she was a specialty of kitchen and bath design. So I have grown up with interior design or design in some way my entire life. And it was a very hard business for her as a single mom. So I knew that I was never going to want to do that. I'm not going to be a designer like my mom. And I tell the story that my very first design appointment, I was 12 years old, and I had one job, and that was to carry the fabric books into the appointment for her. And I immediately felt that they needed to know my opinion on the fabrics as they were discussing things. And my mom told me to go sit in the car. So I was technically fired from my first design consult, but I went to college knowing that I did not want to be a designer like her because it looked really hard. And I ended up actually in business and I worked for a bank. And I had been asked by the branch manager to help her kind of move stuff around in her office because I didn't realize it at the time, but I talked about decorating and design all the time. I was always into it. And so after I helped her with her office, another person in the bank asked me to help them. And then next thing I know, I'm helping in the lobby. And a year later, I was doing the lobbies for Wells Fargo in the area that we lived in. And my mom called me one day and said, "Do you realize you have a design business inside of a bank?" And that was an epiphany. And so I quit my job and I started my own little company.
Okay. Now, so did you study design in school then, or did you study business in school?
I did not study design.
Okay. So I guess you're self-taught then? I mean, that's what it kind of sounds like from just your experience growing up with a mother who's a designer and just that it sounds like you have that keen eye for design as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think you either have it or you don't. I know a lot of things you can be taught,
Yeah.
But if you don't get that tinge in your gut when you sense something's wrong in a space, that innate feeling, and if you have that early on in your life, I think you should follow that instinct. I was trying to fight it, but
So, talk to us a little bit or walk me through your creative process when designing such a wide range of kind of short term rental properties? I imagine it's a little bit all over the place as far as the desires of what you're receiving from your clients. But I feel like you also have probably not a strict, maybe the wrong word, but a process to really help you kind of walk through this process with each client whenever they first come on as a client.
so for vacation rental design, right? Because we do both. We do residential and vacation rental design, but it's a completely different process.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And, I give the example of if I'm doing a residential project, it's a more intimate experience. And maybe we need to incorporate a very specific chair or a recliner or a specific look that the client is interested in because we're creating the home that they're going to live in and feel like them. Our job is to make them love their home the way they want to live in it. But in a vacation rental, I'm designing for a guest that we'll never meet. We're designing for an avatar. So in vacation rental design, we actually start with data. So once we're hired, we actually run a report and we work with a great company called Data Led Designs. And they do a very involved report for us of the competition over 2 to 3 years, positive and negative reviews, what our competition is making annually, where their losses are, what amenities they have. Because if you think about it, if you're designing a vacation rental in a specific area, you all have the same amenities in the area. You all have the same draw. You could potentially have several competitors on the same street. You have the same view. You have the same everything.
Mhm.
So literally your only tool in the toolbox to make you be different is design. So we use their data to help us outline how that design should be. A lot of people I have seen go into, let's say, for example, I see this in Galveston. It's a coastal community. And if you scroll through a lot of the vacation rentals, there are a lot of pale blue walls, white shiplap, very coastal, throw in some seashells, and it's just row after row of, or picture after picture of rentals like that. And what we say is our job is to stop the scroll. If a potential guest is looking for a place to rent, you want them to stop when they scroll past your option. So I'm never going to say, well, we should do what your competition looks like. We're going to need to do the opposite. So for the process, the first thing we do is the data, and then we present to the client the design direction that we want to take them on. And then it's less of a personal conversation because, to be honest, they really are more interested in ROI, the return on investment. So our job is to give a beautiful stop the scroll design that is still profitable for them. And we balance a reasonable budget. The days of filling a house with Wayfair and looking at it as disposable in a year, those days are gone. And guests want an elevated experience. They know quality. So that's what we do. We go in that way. We have very specific brands we work with, and we call it soup to nuts. So any touch that their guest will have with them, we are a part of. That's their branding, their communication, the follow-up, any additional amenities that they offer outside of our design, all the way through down to the last teaspoon, we're involved.
And then if you don't mind, just touch a little bit more on the residential process. I imagine that's a little bit more of an intimate process, so to speak, as far as really finding a way to make that a home for them so that they're comfortable in that space, correct?
They're completely different. We don't need any data. And we basically interview them and we ask them to not change anything if we're going to come into the space. You know, please do not put away the shoes. Please do not hang up the coats that the kids dropped. Don't put away the dog toys. We want to see how you live in your space. And then we have a series of questions we go through. We've gotten busy enough with vacation rental design that we actually now only do design work for people that we have done a vacation rental for or are in the process of doing because it's now feeding each other.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for you personally, is it if whenever you have those connections with a person and you've been working in their residential home, is it kind of interesting to see how they work with you differently if they're if they've also hired you to work in a vacation home, or I didn't know if there was like a I don't know. For some reason, I could see somebody's home being very specific and something that they would love, and then a rental home just a very different experience for them. But I may be overthinking it.
Well, it really is a learning process on both sides. But what typically happens is that a vacation rental owner, especially if they're newer in the business, their instinct is to want to make it the way they want it. And that's why you need the data, because we have to continually remind them, like, I know you love purple, but we're not going to do purple. But when we do your own home, we'll do purple.
Gotcha.
So it does still become kind of an intimate relationship in the beginning, but the questions that we ask on the residential side are completely different than on the vacation rental side. So, but knock on wood, we tend to become friends with all of our clients. So you just kind of learn the process. The very first vacation rental I ever did in 2015, I still work for that person today.
Oh wow. What area was that in? Just curious where that was.
Waldport, Oregon.
Okay. So, what inspired you to co-found VRD, and how do you see it shaping the future for designers in the short-term rental space?
VRD was inspired by what I couldn't find. So I did my first vacation rental in 2015 and I loved it. I had to Google what a VRBO was when I got hired. I didn't know what an Airbnb was. The first one I ever stayed in was the one that I did because I just didn't travel that way. And but I immediately loved it and I felt like this could be something that had longevity for me. And then COVID happened and our business exploded overnight. And you see those images of people alone on a plane? That was us. We the what started the crazy was we were already getting pretty busy, but we got a call when COVID started going, and an executive with Starbucks wanted to rent one of the homes we did for a month. And that at the time was not normal.
Mhm.
And they wanted to be able to conduct business out of the home because nobody was going into the office. So they flew us in and we quickly made workspaces in the vacation rental. And that ended up transitioning us moving down the line of all these different rentals for this property manager. And then, people were just wanting to improve and offer extra amenities to vacation rentals during COVID to keep up with the demand. So it was a very exciting time. But what I found was, and I went to High Point during COVID. It was actually a blast going to COVID market, but which sounds terrible. But what I found was I sourced differently. I talk about the design differently. Nobody was talking about it back then, and especially during COVID. And I couldn't find my people. I couldn't find people that wanted to talk to me. And I knew other people were out there. I just didn't know how to find them. And I was actually talking with Luann Nagara one time, and she had just had me on her podcast. And afterward, I was talking to her about this, and she goes, "It never occurred to me that you source differently, that brands need to hear a different message." And so it was the next market after COVID, and I was there, and I knew I needed to somehow figure out how to bring people together. And I saw Jane Dagme on the street, and she had just left Designers Today magazine, and she had just launched HPXD, and this was her first market as the new director of HPXD. And so I thought I was going to be nauseous. I just said, Jane, I was very nervous. We were not close friends then. We were acquaintances. And I was very intimidated by her because she's so cool. And I said, Jane, congratulations on your new position. I think I have a great idea. And she's like, what's that? And I told her, I said, I think there's more designers out there like me, vacation rental designers, but I can't find them. We need a summit. We need an event. And she's like, I like it. And it morphed from there. And so we did our first summit together. We got High Point Market to sponsor us, and all these brands came in, and they all did not know what we were doing. They just kind of took a leap of faith. Jane really dug in. And after that first summit, I realized when the people came to the summit and loved being able to talk about what they do or were excited about doing it, I was like, how am I going to keep this? This is just a summit. This was 3 days. So within a week, we formed the collective and had to create something that people could join that had value to them so we could keep them in contact. I wanted my community. And there's a lot of solo designers out there or people with one or two teammates, and you feel isolated. And I wanted to take care of that.
That's awesome. Now, you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but designing for function and ROI is a big part of your work. How do you balance the aesthetic beauty with data-driven design strategies that actually perform and are received by clients well and their renters?
That sounds really complicated when you spell it out like that, but really, you're creating beautiful spaces that function. So figure it's kind of like staging with a specific kind of creative idea, but a stager never worries where you're going to drop your luggage or where you're going to hang your bathrobe. But I compare it to staging because as a designer, let's use a kitchen, for example. You want to have beautiful tchotchke and things on the counters in the kitchen. That's how we design, right? We want all those vignettes and moments. But a true vacation rental experience, we typically do larger ones. They're going to come in and they just came from Costco or something like that. And they have a whole bunch of food they need to wipe out in a week. And there's a bunch of people in the house. They are not putting away the food in the counters. They're not doing all the things we do in a residential home. So we do not put tchotchke all over the kitchen. We create big open spaces for them so that they can see everything they brought, and it'll hopefully be all gone by the end of the week the way they want it. Things like that. Our entryway needs to be pretty, but there has to be plenty of room for luggage because they've actually found that, especially in big groups, everybody comes in, they drop their luggage. The kids want to run and see where the room is or what's the view, and they run around. You do your little dance like, well, who gets what room and da da da, and then the luggage moves. So the entryway has to have plenty of space. So those types of aesthetics are designed into it. And then the amenities, like we just did a golf course project and it was in Oregon, lots of rain. So we included heated dryers for their shoes, heated dryers for their jackets. They're like these peg things that hang on the wall. You just stick your gloves and your shoes. It's Oregon. And then everything's dry for them the next day. Cubbies to hold their golf clubs. And then we found that they had a very large EV community nearby. So we added a Tesla charger. So those types of amenities work in through our data, but you still have to do the pretties and the really good bedding and the moments. And when they're sitting in a certain spot and they're like, wow, I have the exact perfect size table for my book and my coffee with a perfect view, and there's a blanket and a basket next to me, and I'm so comfortable. That's the plan.
That's awesome. I mean, it really is about just nailing down the function of a space whenever you think about going on vacation, whether it's by yourself or with other people, that just like what's going on outside and how it's going to impact how you enter a space and live in it for whether it's 3 days or 3 months.
Yeah.
I like that. I really like the golf shoe thing. Like I would have at no point in my life would have ever thought about that, but it makes somebody's life very convenient when they're on vacation and they're not trying to figure out a workaround with something like that if that comes up. So,
Well, Jane Dagby said this to me once, and I never thought of it till she's the way she said it. And she said, "Your job is to think up everything that they need or want without them realizing that's what they need or want."
mhm. So you're definitely doing it for sure. So, as a speaker and a panelist at major events like High Point Market and the summit that you mentioned, what conversations are you most passionate about bringing to the stage?
I am extremely passionate about collaboration, and that's very important to me. That's why I started the collective, why I wanted a summit, and that goes across the board to me. I'm honored to be here with you with DSA. I'm excited to work with DSA. When I learned about it, I joined immediately, wanted to be a part of your community too. I truly believe that your success comes from rising tides, meaning we all work together. And that goes for brands too. And one of the biggest things I encourage in our collective is brand loyalty is really, I don't know how else to say it. In the collective, we have brand partners and they offer very special discounts just for our members. And what I'm asking our members to do is hey, we've vetted these people. They're offering you a very special buying opportunity you can't get on your own. And you're not going to support one person's account. These are direct for you. But in trade, utilize this for brand loyalty. Create that relationship because it's so much more. It's learn who your rep is. If you have an issue or a moment or an idea or a potential collaboration, you have a relationship for that. And I've seen that so many times that people source from a company, and if there's an issue or an idea, they have nobody to contact because they've never taken the time to make that relationship. And my relationship with brands and designers is why I'm where I am today. I really believe that.
So what do you think are the biggest misconceptions designers have about getting into the vacation rental market?
Let's see, misconceptions. Filling a house with an order from Wayfair. That breaks my heart. Sharing your discount. This is a business.
Mhm.
There's absolutely no reason. Do not be intimidated. What I hear a lot of times is, well, because you're starting in the business. I get it. It's hard to get your foot in the door, especially when you don't have a bunch of projects to say, look, here's what I do. So trust me. When you're trying to get your foot in the door, I what worked for me was some give and take. So I maybe was very creative on some sourcing so that I could get more bang for the buck. Um, Maybe I didn't do the markup that I should have on so many things at the beginning because I really wanted the job and I wanted good pictures. That was important to me. But what I see is that sometimes designers either give everything to the client because the client's saying, "Well, I don't want to spend a lot of money. This is a rental." And they don't have that education or confidence to say to these potential owners or investors, your numbers are off. What you consider a budget is wrong. That where's your number coming from? This is real math over here. That's hard to have that conversation. And so what I hear sometimes is that in trade for that, designers will give them all their pricing so they'll get the job. And that's a mistake. And that will bite you in the butt.
That definitely makes sense. Can you share a project that pushed your creativity or taught you something unexpected about working in the short-term rental space?
I'm on one right now. I'm doing a project in Brenham, Texas, and it has just grown and grown. The biggest lesson I learned was do not be afraid of what to present. Um, it started as they bought 7 acres. The guy owns a rock and roll band, and he just wanted to kind of redesign, like rock and roll light their properties. And really just was looking for some design. And when Peg and I were putting together the design boards, she said, we should just go all in. That's what they're paying us for. Let's just give them the crazy ideas. You never know. And all I kept thinking in my head was his budget. And but I'm like, you're right. Let's just do it. And so we put in a guitar shaped pool and all these other things, and he loved it. The budget completely changed. The entire project has completely morphed. We are now redoing both buildings, and one building is going to be designed to look like you've entered his tour bus, and it's a bunk room. And we had to invent this bunkhouse bathroom situation, which is right out of like Yellowstone, I think. And the house has a speakeasy in it, and kept saying, I know the budget is this, but what about this? And it just keeps expanding. So again, I had to, it's out of my, like, I don't know how to build a bunkhouse room that looks like a tour bus. I've never done that, but we're figuring it out.
That's pretty awesome that you're able to still, after almost 2 decades in business, just kind of play with these new ideas and new concepts and just continue. It's always challenging you, it's not like, oh,
Oh,
just
yeah.
turn that off. So that's pretty awesome that you're still able to do
Thank you. That's why I love vacation rental design. I'm never going to have a residential project that says I'd like a bunkhouse tour bus with a speakeasy. I feel confident saying that's not going to happen.
Watch somebody call you in like 6 months. Oh, well, okay. Eat my words. So how do you see the intersection of community, education, and mentorship playing out within the VRD, especially for designers who are just starting out in this niche?
I would be remiss if I didn't say, and this is from the heart, that they should attend the Vacation Rental Design Summit because that's why we made it. Everything you just said, that is literally why we have the summit. That's the last week of June in High Point, North Carolina. And it is my co-founders of Erica Surrett and Jane Dagmy and I. That is our message, what you just said. So that would be my first thing to tell you. And secondly, I would say to join the collective, because that is also what we do. But if you're interested in vacation rental design and you don't like those other two options I gave, there wasn't a few years ago, but there's now resources online to help you. And we hope to get a CEU together about this, but there is so much more information now than what I was looking for in 2015 or even in 2020. So you got to just go for it. What is the worst that can happen? If you try to do a vacation rental property, what is the worst thing that happened? You tried a different niche and it wasn't for you. But I'm going to tell you, every single vacation rental owner owns a primary residence. So we don't do any marketing because the two feed each other. It's amazing.
That is nice that they kind of play hand in hand to support your business
Yeah.
going on. Because even if someone, you like you said, you do their residential property, who's to say that they're not going to continue to develop vacation properties just moving forward? So you're always able to continue to work with a client like that. So
1 in 5 of the considered wealthy, which I think is like 220,000 a year and above, which is typically a target client for a residential project. 1 in 5 own a second home.
oh, wow.
So you, if anything, you should know the basics of this design category, which happens to be the fastest growing design category in the world. You should at least know the basics of it because if 1 in 5 of your clients is going to have a second home, you may need to know some of this stuff.
So with everything you have going on, the design firm, VRD, speaking engagements, leadership roles, and I feel like there's probably 30 other things. What keeps you energized and grounded both professionally and personally?
Uh, well, I'm able to do so much now because now I'm an empty nester. 10 years ago, I couldn't do everything I'm balancing now because I still had children at home. So that is a big difference of why I'm able to balance. Um, I have a husband who works more than I do. So, but we both do it because we love it. You can have a hard day, but if you get a message from a designer that says, I've just finished my first vacation rental and I loved it, or hey, I have a question about this. Do you mind helping me? Like whatever happened in the day, I'm like, this is the best day.
That is pretty awesome. And then this one wasn't on the list, but it's something I always like to ask. Kind of, what are your words of wisdom or your advice, maybe for whether it's someone who's this is their first job or first industry role, I guess, in any type of profession, or maybe they're jumping ship from another profession coming into design. What kind of advice might you have for them as they enter this industry?
I would say you just jump in and figure out if it's the deep end later. I mean, that's been my theory because now there's so many resources for you. If a client says, I want to have a speakeasy, I'll be absolutely, we're going to do that. We're going to make it happen. And then I'm going to go back to my office and figure out what the hell I'm going to do. But to the client, I'm going to make that happen. So don't be afraid. It's the same thing I tell my kids, like, go through it in your head. What is literally the worst possible scenario? What is it? You're not going to just walk away from the project. You're going to finish it. That's what professionals do. You may not love the process, but you at least tried it. But what if you absolutely love the process? Why not find out?
Yeah. And especially, and if kind of you follow that other piece of advice as far as the collaboration, there's always, hopefully for
Always.
these, somebody that you can collaborate with and kind of lean on and be a mentee for to kind of learn how can you go through this process, even if you've never built or designed a guitar shaped swimming pool.
But, I've been doing this for a minute, and this is my first guitar shaped pool. But what I think drives us and the other designers that we mentor or coach or part of the collective is that residential design is awesome, but you don't always get to stretch all your design muscles because you have to make sure you're keeping true to your client too. But in vacation rental design, you actually are encouraged to stretch your design muscles. And how great is that?
That's pretty awesome. Kind of play with all those things that you may have wanted to put in someone's home, but
Yeah,
maybe wasn't a good fit. Now you
because
can kind of play with it and dabble in it in a vacation rental.
absolutely. You're designing a rental. Nobody wants to book a vacation rental that looks like their neighbor's house or a normal house. They want a little wow. So how often do you get to do wow?
Yeah. Well, I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else that you had maybe hoped to share with me, Jessica, just about professionally, personally, to our members or anything like that?
Well, I'm honored to have been here, so thank you for asking me. I would just say I encourage anybody that's interested to please attend our summit and to check out Vacation Rental Designers Collective because that's why we made these. I mean, we want to support.
I appreciate it greatly. So I'm excited to be able to share your piece with our readers and our members.
Thank you. Thank you. It was nice talking with you.
You as well.